He thought her forgiveness meant surrender, but forgiveness is not weakness. Forgiveness is the quiet return of the crown to her own head. It is the moment she remembers that her heart was never his to keep. That is where the story begins, where forgetting ends and sovereignty is born. There was once a time she confused love with loyalty to pain. She believed that to forgive meant to erase what happened, to smooth the chaos, to swallow the sharp edges of betrayal. But memory does not dissolve under pressure. It becomes diamond. The feminine wound is not forgetfulness. It is the ache of remembering too much, feeling too deeply, carrying the stories of others as her own. In the architecture of psyche, man fears rejection. Woman fears abandonment. His terror is the locked door. Hers is the empty room. Both are shadows of the same root, the loss of control over being seen, being valued, being chosen. Culture has taught her to be pleasing, to mend, to stay soft even when she is breaking. So she learns to smile while bleeding, to nurture the very hand that trembles from having struck her. But forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. It is not a return to the wound. It is the reclaiming of the power that was given away at the moment of hurt. It is the soul's refusal to remain enslaved by resentment. The queen archetype rises here, not as ruler of others but as ruler of self. Her throne is inner stillness, her crown the unshakable knowledge of worth. When she forgives, she does not forget. She releases her own energy from captivity. Imagine her walking through the corridors of memory, each one a whisper of what was done, what was said, what was taken. Her fingers touch the walls not to cling but to bless and move on. She does not erase the hall, she lights it. That is forgiveness, the illumination of what was dark, not its denial. In myth, the queen was once the maiden, open, unguarded, radiant with trust. Her betrayal initiated her into power. Psyche, Persephone, Guinevere each faced descent and return. Their descent was not punishment but passage. To forgive, a woman must descend into her own underworld, to face the ghosts of her dependency, her longing for validation, her illusion that love could save her from herself. He thought her silence meant she had forgotten. He mistook her calm for numbness, but silence can be a temple and she is its priestess. In the stillness after the storm, she gathers her fragments, names them, and returns them to the altar of self. She learns that forgiveness is not about him. It is about her freedom from the gravitational pull of bitterness. There is a story. A man betrays her trust and she meets him again months later. He looks for anger, for tears, for anything that proves she still revolves around his orbit. But her gaze is steady, her voice clear. She says nothing cruel, she does not perform indifference. She simply stands, present, whole, unavailable for the drama that once consumed her. That moment, though invisible to him, is sacred alchemy. The energy she once used to survive him now fuels her rebirth. Forgiveness is not forgetting, it is reordering the hierarchy of meaning. The memory remains, but its authority dissolves. The heart becomes sovereign again. To forgive is to look at the scar and say, "You belong to me now. You no longer define me." Psychologically, this is individuation, the integration of the shadow that once ruled unconsciously. In forgiving, she reclaims the lost pieces projected onto the other. The rage, the shame, the desire for control, all returned home. Jung would say that what we refuse to own becomes our fate. Forgiveness ends that possession. It is an act of repossession of the self. You who listen now, ask yourself, whom have you made the warden of your pain? Whose name still binds your energy like a spell? When you forgive, you break that enchantment. You release your psychic investment from the debt of what should have been. Forgiveness does not demand contact. It does not require explanation. It is a ritual performed in silence, a coronation unseen. Tonight, perhaps, sit alone. Breathe into the places that still tremble. Imagine the throne within you empty but waiting. With each breath, feel yourself ascending it. Whisper the words, "I release you, I reclaim me." Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is remembering without chains. It is the transformation of memory into wisdom. The queen does not beg history to change. She commands her own energy to return, and it does. There is a stillness that follows the storm of betrayal, but it is not peace. It is the sacred silence before understanding. Many mistake it for numbness, but numbness is the shadow of healing, not its absence. The woman who begins to forgive feels the tremor between her ribs where her loyalty once lived. The silence frightens her because it no longer echoes his name. Yet this is how sovereignty begins, not with noise, but with the quiet withdrawal of energy from. Illusion. The queen archetype does not arise through victory but through loss. She is not born from applause but from ashes. Every woman who has been abandoned, overlooked, or silenced knows this threshold, the space where heartbreak threatens to become identity. This is the turning point. To forgive is to stand at that threshold and refuse to turn the wound into a shrine. She no longer feeds her pain as proof of her goodness. The masculine wound fears rejection. He wants to be chosen because he equates love with validation. The feminine wound fears abandonment. She wants to be kept because she equates love with safety. Both chase wholeness through the other's weakness. But when she forgives, she breaks this mirror. She stops trying to be his safety, stops offering her empathy as payment for mistreatment. Forgiveness, then, is not compliance. It is the end of codependency disguised as compassion. He may never understand this. To him, her letting go seems cold, unfeeling, or arrogant. That is the masculine projection, the belief that her warmth exists for his comfort. But forgiveness is her reclaiming of warmth for herself. She does not withdraw love. She withdraws the illusion that love must be earned. In mythic language, this is the queen's return from exile. The people within her, the fragments of her psyche, once divided in chaos, now gather again. The warrior within her stands guard at the boundary. The lover within her softens the heart but no longer negotiates worth. The mother nurtures her inner child instead of her oppressor. And the queen presides over them all, knowing peace is not the absence of pain, but mastery over its meaning. There is an ancient image, a throne carved from stone, half buried in the forest. Moss covers it, yet it remains. This is her sovereignty before she remembers it. When she forgives, she brushes away the moss. She sits again. She does not seek revenge. She does not plead for apology. Her power no longer depends on his awakening. She simply remembers her own. One evening, she receives a message from the man who once shattered her. He says he's changed, that he understands now. She feels the old ache stirring, the urge to respond, to explain, to prove she's healed. But then she feels something deeper, calm detachment. She realizes she owes no performance of grace. True forgiveness needs no audience. She deletes the message and breathes. The silence that follows is not emptiness. It is the sound of her boundaries humming with power. Forgiveness without forgetting means the past no longer dictates the terms of her present. The memory remains, but it has been alchemized. Jung called this the integration of the shadow, the transformation of the unconscious into light. Every time she remembers without bitterness, she rewrites the inner myth. The villain becomes the teacher. The heartbreak becomes the portal. You too may feel this threshold. You may sense the exhaustion of carrying someone else's ghost. The psyche tires of being haunted. When you forgive, you are not excusing what happened. You are releasing your identity as the one who was harmed. There is a subtle but profound shift here, from victimhood to authorship. Forgiveness is authorship. It is rewriting the contract of meaning. Forgiveness also dissolves projection. As long as you remain tethered to resentment, the other still defines your emotional weather. You orbit their gravity, unconsciously reenacting the story to keep them alive in your psyche. When you forgive, you end the orbit. The sun of yourself burns bright enough to sustain its own light. Do you feel the difference between forgetting and forgiving now? Forgetting is amnesia, it numbs. Forgiveness is remembrance with consciousness, it awakens. When you forget, you repress. When you forgive, you integrate. And integration is the only way to become whole. Tonight, when silence stretches around you, listen to it. Feel how vast it is. It is not absence, it is invitation. Sit with the echo of your own heartbeat and recognize that it beats for you, not for the memory of someone who could not hold you. That is the sound of the throne being reclaimed. Forgiveness is not sentimental, it is regal. It does not say it's fine. It says, I am free. There comes a moment when the mind stops replaying the scene. The betrayal, the argument, the silence after, these lose their authority to command her attention. The queen does not seek closure through the one who wounded her. She creates closure within. This is the quiet revolution that forgiveness births. She no longer demands the past to behave differently. She becomes its ruler instead of its prisoner. Every woman carries a lineage of silence within her. Generations of unspoken apologies, swallowed anger, and dutiful smiles have shaped her nervous system into an instrument of survival. She learns early that harmony is safer than honesty. So she forgives too soon, confuses peacekeeping with peace, and accepts half love as destiny. Yet the unconscious keeps score. Every premature forgiveness carves another small hollow in the self, a place where resentment festers under politeness. To truly forgive, she must first stop lying to herself. She must admit the depth of the wound. Anger, once repressed, must be acknowledged, not indulged, but witnessed. The queen archetype does not rise from denial, she rises from integration. Her forgiveness is not pretty. It is fierce, sacred, and deliberate. She does not bypass pain, she blesses it by seeing it fully. Only then can she release it. The masculine wound struggles here. He fears being wrong more than being cruel. To acknowledge harm feels like annihilation of ego, so he defends, rationalizes, retreats. But forgiveness from the queen does not require his confession. She no longer bargains with his awareness. Her liberation is self-sourced. The act of forgiving him is the act of rescuing herself from the need for his remorse. In Jungian language, this is the moment of individuation, the psyche's declaration of sovereignty. The woman no longer identifies with the roles of savior, victim, or martyr. She integrates her shadow, the rage, the vengeance, the longing for retribution. Instead of suppressing these, she learns from them. Rage teaches her boundaries. Vengeance shows her where she has given away her power. Longing reminds her of the magnitude of her capacity to love. All of these are reclaimed and transformed. There is a story whispered through myth. Inanna, queen of heaven, descended into the underworld stripped of her jewels, her crown, her garments, everything she thought defined her power. Only by facing her sister, the shadow, could she rise again, luminous and whole. Forgiveness is that descent. You cannot rise without facing the darkness that mirrors you. In real life, the scene might look like this. She sits across from the memory of him in her mind, the version that once dominated her emotional world. She looks him in the eyes, not to plead, but to pronounce a decree. You no longer have authority over my peace. It is not anger, it is law. In that silent courtroom of the soul, she becomes judge, witness, and redeemer at once. Forgiveness is not granted, it is claimed. It is not a favor to the other. It is a reclamation of energy once lost to the illusion of control. To forgive without forgetting is to retain wisdom while shedding poison. She keeps the lesson, not the wound. The scar remains visible, but it no longer bleeds. It becomes ornament, symbol, memory of resilience. The psyche transforms resentment into discernment. What once triggered her now teaches her. When someone tries to manipulate her again, she no longer reacts with rage or fear. She recognizes the pattern, smiles inwardly, and steps away. That is what healing looks like: boring, steady, sovereign. There is no spectacle, only grace. You may feel resistance to this. The mind clings to grievance as identity. It whispers that letting go means letting them win. But forgiveness is not surrender to injustice. It is refusal to be defined by it. When you hold onto resentment, you remain energetically entangled with what hurt you. When you forgive, you cut the cord. The freedom that follows is quiet, almost anticlimactic, but it expands like dawn. The Stoics knew this truth well. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is to be unlike the one who wronged you. Seneca called anger a temporary madness. The queen embodies this wisdom. She does not seek to punish. She seeks to rise beyond the level of the wound. Her throne is built upon emotional discipline, not detachment but mastery. the ability to feel deeply without being ruled by feeling. Tonight, perhaps you will feel the pull of memory again. You will see the face, hear the words, sense the ache returning. Let it come. Do not push it away. Watch it with the eyes of the Queen. Let the emotion move through you like wind through the leaves, present, alive, but transient. Whisper to yourself, I remember, and I am free. Forgiveness is not the end of the story. It is the reclamation of authorship. The pen that once wrote your pain now writes your prophecy. There is a certain elegance in release. It is not loud, not theatrical. It is a shift so subtle the world might never notice, but the soul does. The queen who forgives without forgetting becomes untouchable in the most human way. She is still capable of tenderness, still capable of love, but she is no longer available for ownership. Her heart remains open, yet guarded by the clarity of self-respect. This is not cynicism. It is sacred discernment. For centuries, women were told forgiveness meant turning the other cheek, that love meant endurance, that softness was virtue. But endurance without consciousness breeds erosion, and softness without boundaries becomes self-erasure. The archetypal feminine was never meant to be endlessly yielding. She was meant to be cyclical, discerning, capable of death and rebirth within the same heart. Forgiveness, when misunderstood, became a weapon used against her. When understood correctly, it becomes her sword. The masculine fears insignificance, the feminine fears invisibility. His fear drives him to dominate. Hers drives her to overgive. Together they spiral into pain. Forgiveness severs this loop. When she forgives, she stops seeking acknowledgement of her suffering from the one who caused it. She begins to see that acknowledgement must come from within. This is the moment she steps into her own mythology, the heroine no longer waiting to be saved, but anointing herself as sovereign. The queen archetype knows the art of restraint. She does not rush to correct narratives or defend her virtue. She allows misunderstanding to exist. She lets the echo of gossip fade against the walls of her silence. For she knows the truth. The one who needs to be understood is still attached to validation. The one who forgives has transcended the need to be believed. There is a night when she dreams of him again, the man who broke her trust. But this time he is small, almost fragile. His presence no longer stirs anger, only compassion detached from desire. She wakes with a strange peace. This is the proof that forgiveness has completed its cycle. She does not wish him harm, nor does she wish him back. She simply wishes him away from her psychic field, from her energy, from her destiny. The witch within her, the aspect that once cursed him in pain, now transforms her spells into prayers for her own liberation. The lover within her no longer confuses passion with pain. The priestess within her restores the sacredness of her boundaries. Each archetype within her rejoins the court of her inner realm, bowing to the queen who has remembered her name. To forgive is to retrieve fragments of soul once scattered through every wound. Jung called this process individuation, mystics called it awakening. Both describe the same thing, the soul becoming conscious of its wholeness. Every time she chooses peace over vengeance, she reclaims another lost fragment. Every time she remembers without reliving, she strengthens her psychic sovereignty. But this does not mean she forgets. To forget would be to erase wisdom hard-earned. The queen keeps her memories as one keeps ancient texts, studied, respected, but no longer dictating the future. The past becomes scripture, not sentence. The crown she wears now gleams with the light of lessons learned. You who have loved and been broken, there is a throne within you too. You cannot see it when you are kneeling in the ashes, but it is there. Every time you say no to self-betrayal, you ascend a little higher. Every time you forgive without inviting old energy back in, you polish the throne. When you finally sit, the world does not change, but your relationship to it does. You stop reacting. You start choosing. There is power in stillness. When others expect explanation, you offer silence. When they expect surrender, you offer distance. This is not cruelty, it is clarity. To forgive someone is to stop letting them write in your emotional diary. You close the book and open a new one, authored entirely by your own hand. In this place of inner rule, her voice changes. It slows. Each word becomes deliberate, like incense curling through the air. When she speaks, she no longer persuades. She pronounces. Her words no longer seek approval, they carry authority. That is the mark of one who has faced her shadow and lived. Forgiveness is not the act of forgetting. It is the refusal to re-enter the cage. You do not need to burn the cage to prove your freedom. You simply walk past it without looking back. That is real power, quiet, sovereign, eternal. Tonight, as you sit with your thoughts, imagine a light within your chest, a flame that once flickered, now steady. This is your power returned. You owe it to no one. You do not need to explain it. Simply let it burn. And if memories rise like ghosts, greet them as old teachers. Nod, thank them, and keep walking. For the throne awaits, and the crown fits only when both pain and peace have been worn. In the temple of her mind, where memory and myth converge, she sits, neither victim nor saint, but witness. The echoes of the past still murmur, yet they no longer dictate rhythm. Her forgiveness has become architecture, solid, deliberate, unshakable. This is what sovereignty feels like. Not triumph, but balance. Not the absence of emotion, but the orchestration of it. The queen forgives not because she must, but because she can. Her silence is not retreat, it is rule. She understands that words once used to explain her worth only diluted it. Now she speaks rarely, each sentence a decree. When she says, "I forgive you," it is not permission, it is proclamation. It means you no longer have access to the energy that once built your pedestal. Many mistake forgiveness for reconciliation, because they cannot imagine love without attachment. But reconciliation requires mutual evolution. Forgiveness requires only one. When she forgives, she severs the psychic tie. She no longer needs him to witness her growth. Her peace does not require his participation. The illusion that her healing must be seen by him dissolves, leaving only truth. Sovereignty is self-referenced. The masculine, faced with such detachment, often confuses it with indifference. His ego, trained to equate emotional intensity with importance, cannot comprehend love that does not orbit him. Yet the queen's forgiveness is the purest form of love. It does not cling, demand, or justify. It acknowledges what was, honors what is, and releases what no longer serves. There is an image of her in the world, walking through a place that once held their memories. The same cafe, the same song drifting from an open window, the same scent that used to summon ache. But she is different now. The world has not changed, her perception has. She smiles faintly, not in nostalgia, but in recognition of how far she has come. The crown, once invisible, glows softly above her as she passes through her old kingdom without chains. Forgiveness reshapes her aura. Those who meet her feel it but cannot name it. Some are drawn, others unsettled. For she no longer plays the old roles. She no longer entertains pity or projection. Those who approach her with games find their reflection too clear, too bright. This is the power of integration, the light of self-awareness that exposes illusion without aggression. She has become mirror and flame both. In psychological language, she has transcended identification with her wound. The hurt woman archetype has dissolved. What remains is the sovereign feminine, conscious, grounded, ungoverned by external chaos. She embodies Marcus Aurelius' quiet command. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Her power is internal governance, not emotional control over others. And yet her softness remains. The danger is in believing sovereignty hardens the heart. It does not. The heart of the queen is vast enough to hold contradictions, compassion without compliance, tenderness without submission, remembrance without obsession. This is the mark of integration. Her heart does not close, it expands, but only inwardly first. You who listen, do you know this space? The moment when anger fades and peace feels almost foreign. When you realize that healing has occurred not because the memory vanished, but because it no longer commands reaction. That is the taste of freedom. You cannot fake it. You can only arrive at it through silence, through patience, through the long ritual of returning energy to yourself. Forgiveness does not erase the story, it changes its meaning. The same words read differently when the reader has evolved. The same pain, once paralyzing, becomes proof of strength. You will find that what once broke you now blesses you. The betrayal that made you question your worth becomes the very event that anchored it. This is divine irony, the universe's way of sculpting sovereignty through fire. In ancient alchemy, lead becomes gold through transmutation, not denial. The queen has done this within her psyche. She has turned her suffering into wisdom, her dependency into discernment, her longing into purpose. What was once emotional lead now gleams with the light of consciousness. That is forgiveness in its truest form, emotional alchemy. She does not need to proclaim this transformation. Her energy speaks it. The way she moves through the world, measured, unattached, luminous, becomes her testimony. Those who once misunderstood her now sense the shift and cannot place it. She has become untouchable not because she hides, but because she vibrates on a frequency no longer aligned with chaos. Forgiveness is not forgetting, it is remembering with power. To remember without pain, to recall without reliving, to see the lesson without reopening the wound, that is mastery. So tonight, before sleep, ask yourself, what part of your power have you left in someone else's story? In whose memory do you still live rent-free? Retrieve it. Call it home. You do not need their apology to begin. You need only your decision. The act of forgiveness is the ritual of retrieval. And when the dawn comes, stand before your reflection. See the quiet authority in your eyes. See the crown of calm above your head. You are not who you were before the wound. You are more. Forgiveness, when it completes its cycle, does not announce itself. It arrives like sunrise through fog, gradual, certain, inevitable. There comes a morning when she wakes and realizes she has gone an entire day without thinking of him. Not with bitterness, not with yearning, simply without. That is the moment sovereignty becomes embodied. Not spoken, not claimed, lived. In the language of archetypes, this is the queen's coronation. It happens not in grandeur but in quiet. No Whitney says, no applause, only the soft click of alignment between who she was and who she has become. The one who once sought justice now seeks only balance. The one who once feared forgetting now honors remembrance as sacred but light. She no longer carries the memory like a weapon, but like a relic, a symbol of how far she has traveled through the underworld and back. There is still tenderness, the kind that looks at the past with mercy, not denial. For the queen knows that before she could forgive others, she had to forgive herself, for tolerating, for trying, for betraying her intuition. This is the final frontier of forgiveness, self-reclamation through self-compassion. Without it, all external forgiveness remains incomplete. The masculine wound still lingers in the collective psyche, his fear of rejection, his hunger for validation. He seeks reflection in her eyes, and when she no longer mirrors his insecurity, he feels unseen. But her forgiveness is no longer about his comfort. It is about equilibrium between anima and animus, the inner marriage of feminine intuition and masculine discipline. Within her, they no longer war, they serve. This balance grants her an energy that feels otherworldly to those still ruled by chaos. When she enters a room, it is as if time slows. She no longer carries urgency, because urgency is the language of lack. Her pace commands respect because it obeys rhythm, not reaction. This is sovereignty in motion, the embodied proof that forgiveness refines power instead of diminishing it. She understands now that forgetting would have cost her wisdom. Every scar is an archive of transformation. The wound was initiation, not punishment. The pain was curriculum, not curse. The forgetting of it would mean forfeiting the education that carved depth into her soul. To remember is to remain conscious. To forgive is to remain free. There is an image she carries in her mind, a throne once draped in mourning veils, now bathed in golden light. Around it, the ghosts of her past bow, not in submission but in recognition that their work is done. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every moment of silence that once tormented her has become part of her mythology. She does not destroy her past, she integrates it. The alchemist does not discard lead, she transforms it. From this vantage, she understands the paradox of power, that to hold it truly, one must stop grasping it. The queen does not cling to her crown, she wears it lightly. Forgiveness is that lightness. The heaviness of vengeance, the density of resentment, the rigidity of moral superiority, all dissolved. What remains is clarity. You may feel this as a subtle shift in your body. The heart softens, the jaw unclenches, the breath deepens. It is not weakness, it is release. The nervous system, long accustomed to defense, begins to rest. Forgiveness is somatic liberation as much as it is spiritual. The body finally trusts that the danger has passed. Now from this peace, something remarkable happens. Her discernment sharpens. Forgiveness does not make her naive, it makes her wise. She sees manipulation long before it speaks. She senses dissonance before words are exchanged. This is the intuition of the healed feminine, no longer clouded by wishful thinking. The same heart that once excused red flags now reads them like sacred text. Forgiveness clears her vision. She meets people differently now. Her energy is calm, but her boundaries are divine law. Those who cannot meet her in truth feel it immediately, the discomfort of someone facing their own shadow in her stillness. Others, those who are also on their path of integration, recognize her. They bow not to her power, but to the peace that emanates from it. Forgiveness has turned her presence into medicine. And this medicine ripples outward. For when one woman forgives authentically, the collective feminine begins to heal. Her daughters, her friends, her sisters, whether blood or soul, feel the shift. The generational inheritance of resentment weakens. The lineage of silence breaks. Her forgiveness becomes archetypal, echoing across time. So now she stands, the queen returned to her throne. She does not need to speak of her healing. It speaks through her posture, through the softness in her voice, through the steadiness of her gaze. She remembers everything, and yet she is untouched. That is the paradox of true power: full memory, zero bondage. You who have traveled this journey with her stand now at your own threshold. The door of sovereignty waits open. Step through it. Let the ghosts bow as you pass. Forgive not to free them, but to free yourself. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.